Hey, it's Mr. Sorensen, and today I'm going to tell you a little bit about this saw right here. This is the miter saw, or otherwise known as the chop saw. Now, this saw right here is really a newer version of a very common old school saw that my grandfather used to build the houses that my dad grew up in. In fact, let me show you behind me. Behind me I've got two models of this same chop saw. Here's the modern miter box or chop saw. This is the old school miter box. This is a Stanley number 360A. This is the kind of miter box saw that my grandfather might have used to build the houses that my dad grew up in. Here's another version over here. Here's a smaller plastic version, kind of a modern throwaway version that you can buy over at Harbor Freight for $5. So all three of these saws that you see right here are really one and the same. They're just different, more modern versions of the same saw. And then if we look down here, I've got this red saw sitting here, which is really the most up-to-date version. That is the sliding compound miter saw. So it is a miter saw, but it has additional tools that it's able to use to make cuts that are wider. So we'll look at that later. Today we want to focus our attention on this little saw right here. This is the compound miter saw. So let's get started by looking at our saw and identifying some of the parts that make up the saw, how you use them, and then we'll look at how the saw gets used. So the chop saw is made up of essentially four basic parts. To start with, we've got a base with a turntable in it. That's going to let us adjust our chop saw to different angles that we want to cut. Secondly, connected to that base with the turntable is a spring-mounted hinge. So the chop saw will plunge into the board and the spring lifts it back out of the board. Connected to that are our last two pieces, the motor assembly, which is connected to the on and off switch, and then the blade. Those four items are the basis of the chop saw. The chop saw base has a fence on it. Our board that we're going to cut has to be held securely against the fence when we plunge the chop saw blade into it. Fences are adjustable, and so sometimes the fence can come apart. It can slide out to be longer. Sometimes it might fold out. So there's a variation on how you can adjust the fence. In our case here, because of the way we have our setup, this fence is here, but it sometimes has to be taken out because this is a compound saw, which means that the saw will tilt, and you can't tilt it if the fence is still attached. So this fence piece comes out, which allows us to tilt the chop saw. This is going to make a bevel cut on the end of a board. Now the fence is connected to the base, and the base has this circle in the middle, and the circle has this handle. So this handle connected to the base is going to allow me to adjust the turntable to between 50 degrees, 0 and 50 degrees, so I can move it anywhere in that range. This handle is a locking handle. When I push that handle down, that has locked the chop saw right where it's at. When I lift it up, the chop saw can be moved. Now, it still doesn't want to move because right here on the chop saw is a protractor. So you can see in a close-up of the protractor that it has these little notches cut out of the edge. Those are quick stops. Underneath, there's a little lever underneath the locking device, and I'm going to move it over. That little lever is spring-loaded. When I push the handle a little bit, I can hear the lever lock into that quick stop. The quick stops are at 22.5, 45, and 31.5. So these are common angles that might get cut on a chop saw, on a job site, let's say. So the protractor is there as a help. So I also notice in here that the chop saw has a throat plate. That yellow piece of plastic that's inserted here is like a throat plate on most of the saws. We're not covering up or hiding a saw blade down in there, but in this case, this little throat plate is there because this is a potential damage spot. The surface of the table can be damaged right here because that's where the blade is going through, and if there's problems, that could get damaged, and then you want to be able to take that part of the blade out, or you want to take that part of the table out and replace it with a clean, fresh new one that doesn't have damage on it. So this little piece is intended to be replaced if it ever were to get damaged. So back in here, we also have some quick stops. Anytime you see a bolt with some nuts that can be moved around, several nuts on it, that is a quick stop of some kind. And I see here a arrow. That arrow is pointing to a protractor. So that protractor is because this is a compound saw. The saw can plunge forward and backwards like that, but it can also tilt sideways like that to 45 degrees. The little bolt here in the back is a little adjustment stop. I can set it perfectly to 45 and lock it into place, and that way when I tilt the head of the blade to 45, it's spot on, and then when I bring it back, this bolt and this nut allow me to preset the stop at 0. So here's my stop nut at 0, and then I can see back in here, here's the protractor and the little arrow, which allows me to adjust and accurately put the saw at any angle that I want from 0 to 45 degrees. Up here on the top of a chop saw is a carrying handle. The carrying handle, and most chop saws are considered tools that can be carried to a job site. They're considered portable. Now the bigger chop saws are very heavy and probably, in order not to get hurt, require 2 people, but still their carrying handles are put on them, they're considered portable. When you do choose to carry your chop saw, remember the head should be in the locked position. You never want to try carrying a chop saw with the head up like this. You will destroy and damage the hinge, and then the accuracy of your cutting is going to be thrown way off. So chop saws are only ever carried when the head has been locked down. So you have the head lock pin back here. You lock that head down, and then here's your carry handle. Directly up above the protractor is this little locking pin. This is the head adjustment locking pin. Here's the motor. The motor on this particular chop saw is a direct drive. The blade directly is connected to the motor itself. Down here at the end is the motor end cap. Most chop saws will have a spindle lock somewhere in here, a little button that you push that locks the spindle so it can't spin, and then that's going to allow you to loosen the nut to take the blade off and change the blade. If you can't stop the motor from spinning, then you don't have any way of unloosening the nut over here. So the spindle lock is a button that's in here. You can see, barely see it right here. There's a little button, that's the spindle lock. That locks the button, locks the spindle so you can loosen the blade, take the blade out, and change it. Right? You have the motor housing that's covering up the motor, and then we have up here we've got the guard that slides out of the way when you are going to make a cut. Right? When I lift it up, the guard slides down to cover the blade, and as I drop this down, notice the guard swings up and out of the way. Remember, you have the right to demand that anywhere you work, if you work with these power tools, that guard has to be in working condition. If that guard is missing, or if somebody has, the guard has been broken and somebody's just kind of left it there broken, you have the right to request it be repaired. Employers are obligated to have all guards in their shop or on their job in working condition for their employees. Now, here's the carrying handle, but right in front of it, right there, that's the operating handle. This is the operating handle. That's what I'm going to grip in order to make my cut on the chop saw. I can cut it, I can grip it with my right hand, or I could grip it with my left hand if I needed to, depending on what I was cutting. Now, right in here, you can see that little black line right there. That is the trigger switch. The trigger switch. The trigger switch means it's on a spring. When I pull it, the saw is going to turn on, and as soon as I let go, it immediately goes to the off position. Right? No toggle switch here. This is spring loaded, so if I let go, it immediately turns off. And a chop saw has a brake on it. Most modern chop saws have a brake. Down here in this end cap is a brake, and so it will bring the chop saw to a quick stop to try to help with my safety. If the brake's not working, get it fixed, right? If you leave the chop saw to coast to a stop, it'll take much longer. You want that brake working so that the blade comes to an immediate stop. Now, back here in the back, you see the dust collection port, or the dust spout, and that's where we can connect, like in this case, we've connected a hose to it that goes to a dust collection system. When you're working with all the power tools, that system is on and it is sucking the sawdust out of this saw. The more we can suck the sawdust out into the dust collector, the less you have to breathe it and the less we need to clean up. That gives us a pretty good idea of all of these parts. Again, this is the base down here. The base. Inside the base, we have this turntable, right? So this circle in here is the turntable. On the front here, this is our miter scale. Our miter scale. And that's how we are able to lock the saw into certain angles. This right here, this is called the miter lock lever. The miter lock lever. And that's how we lock the chop saw in the position that we want it so that it won't move and we can make our cut accurately. This little lever down here underneath that I pointed out to you, that little lever is called the miter detent. And the miter detent lever clicks into these little notches that are cut on the miter scale. These are quick stops. Each one of those little notches represents a quick stop. The miter lock, or the miter detent lever, will quickly lock into each one of those quick stops to get you to your cut. Like you can cut 45 much quicker than if you're trying to get your little arrow in here on your protractor right on the 45 and then push this down. All I really need to do is get it close until I hear it click in and stop, and that's it. I don't even need to lock that down. Now I'm ready to make my cut at 45 degrees. Again, most of the time when we use the saw, we use it at 90, like that. Now, mounted in the back here are some additional tools. Like here's a tool to adjust the blade. I can take the blade in and out. There is the wrench for that. Here is it's a hex head screwdriver, and all of the little pieces in here that hex head is going to fit into, and so that comes on the tool. That tool sits back here behind the fence. The fence locking nut is right here as well. That allows me to drop the fence in. I can adjust the fence sideways, left and right, and then I tighten that. So in general, when I'm going to use a chop saw, if I have the possibility of clamping it or bolting it to the work surface that I'm working on, I'm better off because the vibration can cause it to move and it could potentially fall onto the floor. The first thing I'm going to do is grab my board and make sure there's no metal in it. I just want to make sure I'm not cutting through old stock, old wood that has nails and screws in it. If I'm going to recycle and reuse wood, that's a great way to go. Know that if you cut through metal pieces, you're obviously going to damage your blade and you're going to have to buy a new one. But it may cost less to buy a new blade than it does to buy all brand new wood to make a project. So there is a cost evaluation that you want to go through if you plan on recycling lumber and building new projects with old wood. This one looks pretty good. It looks like it's in good shape. It's ready to set up here on the table. I'm going to measure my board and put a mark at the exact place where I want to make my cut. Now, when I'm going to make my cut, I like to put a X on the side of the line where I want the blade to go. So a really key thing here on a chop saw is to remember this is not like a pair of scissors. I do not want to bring my chop saw down on the middle of the line. I want to bring my chop saw down on the side of the line, either the left side or the right side, depending on what is the piece I'm trying to keep, what is the piece that is the scrap. So when I'm laying this out, I'm going to put a mark on the side of the line that I want the blade to go in. That way I remember when I'm about to cut, is my blade coming down on the right side of the line? So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set that up, and I'll bring my saw blade down so that I can make sure that it's going to cut exactly to the side of the line, just a little bit right where I want it. Now, when I'm going to make my cut, I need to make sure my feet are set correctly. If I'm going to make my cut like this, where the board is out here on the right side of the line, then I need to stand to the right, and I'm going to grab the handle with my left hand. My right hand is holding the board tightly to the fence, and I'll make my cut. If, on the other hand, my board is over here on the left side, and I'm going to hold the board down to the tabletop, snug to the table with my left hand, I'm going to grab the handle with my right hand. I'm going to bring that down, make sure it's lined up exactly where I want it to cut. And again, I should be standing right here in front of the saw, my feet spread just a little bit apart, so I'm well balanced. Now when I stand here in the front of the saw to cut using my left hand holding the board, my right hand should be on the operating handle. Plunge the saw through. I want to wait for the saw blade to stop spinning before I lift it back up. That way the spinning blade never lifts up into the air where I can get my hand into it. Now the thing I don't want to do is I don't want to stand here, hold the piece of wood against the fence with this hand, and cross my arms and reach over here. That is putting my arm directly in front of the blade that is plunging forward to make the cut. So my arms should never cross on a chop saw. I'm either going to stand fully to the left side, I bring the blade down with my right hand, or I'm going to stand fully to the right side, I'm going to bring the blade down with my left hand, and I'm not crossing my arms in either of these cases. You never cross your arms to make a cut on a chop saw. My hands should be 6 inches away from the blade. So you notice on our chop saw, the table is painted red. If I keep my hands outside of that red area when I'm holding the board, my hands will be at least 6 inches away from the blade. So that's a critical piece. My hands should never be closer than 6 inches to the blade. Now if I want to make an angled cut, then I'm going to come down here lift up the detent lever, and I'm going to bring this over to 30 degrees, and I hear it click in. I'm now going to slide my board over, and again I would bring the handle down and make sure it is sitting on the pencil line, get it aligned just right, and then make my cut. After I make the cut, I'm going to hold the blade down until the blade stops spinning before I lift it back up. And that allows me to make a mitered cut on the edge of the board. Now let me show you a very complicated cut that this saw makes, which is called the beveled miter, or the compound miter cut. So to make a compound miter cut, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to turn both of these, both the table and the head of the saw, to an angle. So I'm cutting two angles at the same time. Very complex thing to do. So I'm going to set this one at 45 this direction. Then I need to, anytime I'm going to slide the head of the saw over, I have to take that fence out. And now I'm going to tilt the head in that direction. So there's two angles in one cut. Very complex to do. Not easy to do when you're just using a skill saw or a circular saw. This makes it very easy to do. I'm going to hold it there till it's done before I bring the head back up. Now, that's a pretty complicated cut on a board. Two angles cut at the same time, both at very accurate at 45, as long as I have my my saw set up correctly. So let me show you one of the weak points of a chop saw. Chop saws are great tools, and they come in handy. They speed up my work by a lot. However, there's one thing that a chop saw cannot do. A chop saw, this is a 10-inch chop saw. A 10-inch chop saw cannot cut through a 1x12 or a 2x12. Okay, so this is a 2x12. That makes it 11¼ inches wide. And notice that the chop saw only cut through about 6 inches of it, barely. If I were cutting this board at an angle, it would cut even less of it. So I have a problem with a chop saw. Chop saws only cut boards that are up to about 6 inches wide. For a board wider than that, I have to choose a different tool. For that, I would choose the sliding compound miter saw. Same saw, but it has a slide rail on it that would allow the head and the handle to move forward by about 6 inches. So now I can cut maybe 12 or 13 inches wide instead of just 6. I want to show you a specialty cut on the chop saw that's also going to help us with a safety issue as well. So for a project that I'm making, I have multiple pieces that I want to cut. The tool that I want for that is this right here, called a stop block. The stop block is going to get locked or clamped right here onto the fence. So that stop block is locked onto the fence. Since my blade is not tilted, I'll go ahead and put the rest of my fence back. Now I'm ready to make my cut, and I want to make 4 of these. So I'm going to set my piece of wood up here on the table, and I'm going to set it in here. Now, here's where I have a problem. Anytime I have a piece of wood on a chop saw trapped between a stop block and the rotating blade, that's the piece of wood that has to have my hand on it. The scrap piece over here on this side that is 4 feet long, once I make the cut, that piece is free. It isn't going to create a kickback situation. It's not going to get bound up in there and fly out. It's not going to create any safety issue. The piece trap between the stop block and the rotating blade is dangerous. That has to have my hand on it at all times until the blade comes to a stop. But I have another dilemma here, which is that it's in the red zone. It's inside the 6-inch safety zone. So to hold it, I'm going to have to rely on another push device, something else besides my hand to hold it down. I put the piece in there up against the stop block, and I'm going to set my push device like that on it. Now it's being held and my hand is not inside the safety zone. Now I'm ready to make my cut. Once I make the cut, I'm going to hold the blade down until the blade comes to a stop. That keeps from raising up a rotating blade and exposing some of that rotating blade to my hands. Right? I can now take that piece out. All I got to do is slide the piece of wood over till it hits the stop block, and I can make a second piece that's identical to the length of the first piece. Again, once I make the cut, I'll let go and keep the saw blade down till it stops spinning. I raise that up. There's my second piece, identical, right? These two pieces are identical in length without measuring them. That's a great way to use a chop saw with a stop block. But when I put that piece in there, when I cut with a stop block, I have to hold onto the piece trapped between the stop block and the rotating blade. Like on most machines, remember I always want to have my safety glasses on. I never know when a piece of wood could come shooting out of there. Lots of sawdust and scraps can come shooting out. I always need a pair of safety glasses on when I'm working with a chop saw. All right, honey, I'll be there in a second. Well, that was my wife. It's time to get home and help with the kids. So I'm going to have to leave you, but I hope you've gotten some good insights into the workings of a chop saw, how they work, and the safety techniques that you need to follow in order to keep yourself safe when using one.